We will get started. So welcome to Granite Group HQ. Again, thank you all for making the effort. I know the weather's slightly inclement today. We've had a good run though, so I don't think we can moan too much about the weather, even though I'm originally British. But we're really delighted to see you all today. You know, our community is so important to us. So Lou Compagnone.
Nailed it.
Thank you.
Just had a few practices.
Thank you, Lou. So we're delighted to welcome Lou today. And before I hand over, we're talking about riding the wave of AI to future-proof your organisation. We don't know how profound AI will be, but clearly it's the hot topic and has been for a while now. You know, what I would observe is certainly this calendar year, we've noticed, you know, in both hiring decisions for talent for organisations and consulting opportunities, you know, delivering transformations, companies are now talking to us about AI capability, whether it's talent or it's an outcome-based piece. It's manifesting itself as an integral part of the conversation now, and it's actually, they're spending money on it basically. So it's been happening in the background, but it is now front of centre when companies are going to market for talent or solutions. So that's worth considering. First industrial revolution, I think it was mid-18th century to about 1830, best part of 100 years, largely UK-based. The second industrial revolution, US, Japan, bits of Australia, other parts of the world. 100 years later, it took about 100 years or so as well. What we do know is the AI and already AGI is not going to take 100 years, probably going to move 1,000 times faster. At schools, for example, I've got 2 teenage daughters. They're using AI intrinsically, and they just get it as part of their learning. We've been encouraging it at home because I've been saying to them, you know, you're going to have to get used to this because you're going to be working for 50 years. They're less enthused about that part, but they just instinctively get the AI conversation as part of their lives. So without further ado, over to you, Lou.
Great. Thanks so much. Thanks everyone for coming out so early as well. Impressive. I'll just start by telling you a little bit about myself. So I'm Lou. I'm the Director of Artificial Intelligence for Datacom. And for those of you who haven't heard about Datacom, it's the biggest tech company in New Zealand, and we're also in Australia. And as part of that, my role is kind of twofold. So I am helping Datacom itself to implement, adopt, and operationalize AI, and I help customers to do the same. And I've got a bit of a weird background. So I'm an accidental tech nerd. My degree is actually in creative writing, which is bizarre. And most of my career 20 years I've been in tech, but most of it has been more on the side of human-centered design, service design, customer experience, and later futurism. But these are weirdly helpful disciplines when it comes to AI, because so much of it is really about finding the right problem and really thinking about this as change and designing for humans. So let's go to what I'm going to talk about today. So I really want to start with, today's topic is going to be really about how AI is going to change the nature of work, the work that we do. And it's something that people ask me about a lot. So especially if I mention at a barbecue what I do, everyone wants to talk about AI, even when people least expect it. Like my partner's Christmas party, he works for a shipping company, and he gave me this brief, Lou, you can't talk nerd tonight. Like, these are not nerds, so don't even bring up AI, just like quiet. Anyway, he sat me next to his boss, and the first question was, what do you do for a job? And then he spent 2 hours drilling me about AI and all of the opportunities they would have as a shipping company. So it's something that's on people's minds, even if they're not technical. And people sort of ask questions like, what does it mean for me? Is it going to take my job? What does it mean for my organisation? And how do I get ready for this big change? And look, it's not surprising that people are confused because there's so many mixed messages out there. So this is my very scientific yeah-nah meter as to whether AI is going to take our jobs. And you can see, even in this, the huge amount of difference between, I love this billboard that says, hey, ChatGPT, finish this building. Your skills are irreplaceable. And then on the other side, if we come over to here, you can see this is the OpenAI ex-chief scientist who's actually built a bunker in case machines come to take us and our jobs. And this quite sobering article, I don't know how many of you read it, in The Guardian last week, that was saying Silicon Valley isn't coming to take some of our jobs, it's coming to take all of our jobs. So, you know, you can just see that huge range of things. We don't know really what the future is going to be, and that's part of what we're going to talk about today. But we do live in an era of post-truth, and a lot of it is going to be looking at multiple possible ways the future is going to go. So that brings me to what I'm going to talk about today. This is, again, very scientific map of how the conversation is going to go. So I'm going to talk a little bit about futures thinking and how that can be a really helpful tool when it comes to thinking about AI and what it means for our jobs and our workplaces. And then I'm going to be talking a little bit about AI strategy at the end and really how we can use that as a tool to inform our AI strategy, and obviously some random things popping into my head along the way. Okay, so let's start by talking about futurism. So very obvious statement, but we can't predict the future, but we can think about multiple possible ways the future can go. And we can think about what it could mean and how it might impact us. And this is where futures thinking comes in as a really useful tool. So I love this quote. This is from a futurist who's actually based in Brisbane called Sohail Inayatullah. And he says, with futures thinking, we use it the future to change the present. So it's not just about the future. It might seem like something fluffy, but it's really so that we can make informed decisions today. I was talking to someone earlier who was talking about doing an AI strategy, and we talked about the fact that you actually need to do a futures back approach to that so that you can actually think about and make informed decisions in Horizon 1. So in futures thinking, we look at how is the world changing and how might we use this to redevelop our services, our operating model, our technology, our culture. And we do this by thinking about a range of possible futures. So again, I really liked this quote. This is actually from a self-help book. It's not from anything to do with futures thinking. But what I liked about it is that mostly why we need to do futures thinking is because it's a change in our culture. It's a change in our mindset. And as leaders, I think we get so stuck in BAU and doing whack-a-mole of regulation changes and compliance that we actually don't make time to think about the future. But we are the most important people who should be thinking about the future. And when we do this, the whole purpose of futures thinking is if we're thinking about the future, then we can actively play a role in shaping how it's going to go. Because a lot of us at the moment are going, there's nothing I can do with what's happening with AI. It's taking over. I'm running to my bunker. But actually, we can decide the role that it's going to play in our organisations, and we can have agency in thinking about how we want it to play a role in our organisations rather than it being something that's just happening to us. I wanted to share a couple of examples as to why I think futures thinking is important. So I don't know how many of you know about what's happened with Weight Watchers recently, but they've gone bankrupt. And I'm surprised because I was that kid who had to go to Weight Watchers with my mum in the 80s and sit there for hours while everyone counted their calories. And Weight Watchers were killing it for a while. Like, they did this amazing digital transformation. They added AI to their apps. They used computer vision to help people to count calories. They had this amazing digital platform. And then something happened, and that something was Ozempic. And they didn't see it coming. And so it's one of those things where you can be so caught in just a little bit of what I call your growth future, doing a little bit better in where you are today, but not seeing those signals of what could actually disrupt and change your entire industry. So this is, I think, I'm going to talk a little bit today about signals and how we look out for them. So this is one of those examples where had Weight Watchers been looking at signals of change, they may have spotted this one.
Just on that, Lou, I think you've got 10 signals packs as giveaways, haven't you?
Thank you.
So
yes.
10, amazing AI signals packs for the best. Well, no such thing as a bad question. First 10 questions.
Thank you for reminding me of that. And also throughout this, I'm going to be sharing some AI signals, a lot of them, And at the end, I'd love to do a discussion about the signals. So just try and bookmark a few in your mind that stand out to you and resonate. And if you get one of the signals packs, there'll be even more in there as well.
In the back on the...
Okay, this is another story that I like to share about why I think futures thinking is pretty amazing. So there's this great futurist called Jane McGonigal. I don't know how many of you have heard of her, but she's actually a game designer as well. And she played this fun game about 12 years ago where she played it with banking executives.
There are signals.
Thank you. She got them to imagine a future in which a global pandemic had just hit. And she got them to keep a diary of what they would do in their lives. So how would they get food to their house? What would they do with their kids? How would they exercise? All that kind of stuff. And they played this game for about 2 weeks. Then when COVID hit the news, all of those execs got in touch with Jane and said, first of all, how did you predict COVID? And secondly, the other interesting thing was all of them said that they felt prepared for what was coming because they had actually gone through this simulation game. So another case for why futures thinking is important is that we can actually play out what could happen. And by doing that, we can build resilience in terms of the habits that we have now that could actually either stop the future that we don't want to happen or enable the future that we do. So I've talked about signals a few times. Now I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into this. So I'm going to focus more today, obviously, on the signals of how AI could impact work and our workplaces. First of all, I want to ask, how many of you know what the difference is between a signal and a trend? No? Oh, one? Oh, yeah, okay. Does someone want to explain what's the difference?
Signals an indicator of something that happened, trends already.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. That's a really good description. Yeah, I think of a signal as a dot and a trend as a line. So a signal is like it's starting to happen. We just don't know which direction it's going to go in. And a trend is definitely playing out, and we can see the direction of it. And we don't know how it's going to be significant yet. So these are a few. I don't know if it's really just me because I'm so obsessed with AI, but I feel like everywhere at the moment, all you see is signals about AI and how it's changing. But what's interesting about it, William Gibson, the economist, said that the future is here, it's just not evenly distributed. And I think that's really true of AI because in some ways people are sort of like, oh, is this just the next blockchain and is there anything in this AI? But then you go to places like China who have AI-powered robot backpacks that are like Neil from the Young Ones that are sort of doing manufacturing. And it's definitely playing out very strongly there. And I've seen recently in the UAE, they've actually just given ChatGPT to every single citizen. So, you know, and I'm going to talk today about 3 horizons of change when it comes to AI. And arguably, I think different places are in different horizons. So the other thing just to say about signals is that they evolve over time. I'm weirdly obsessed with Neuralink because I just think this is one of the most fascinating news articles and a great example of how signals evolve over time. So for those of you who don't know about Neuralink, it's Elon Musk's startup that does neuro implants. And how this played out as a signal was interesting. So first of all, Elon was talking about acquiring this startup and then started experimenting with putting these implants into monkeys. Then all of a sudden, monkeys were playing Pong with their brains. Then the monkeys got sick, and you kind of thought at this point, is this going to be the end of this signal? Then you saw him starting to put the implants into humans, and almost the whole pattern repeated until you come to today where we've got quadriplegic patients playing Mario Kart with their minds, and Elon's starting to talk about how it's going to be as expensive as an Apple Watch to have this Neuralink implanted in your brain, and it's going to be done by a robot. Yeah, which is pretty alarming. But it's just, and there's been you'll see now lots of signals of other people following with where this is going to go. So I just thought that was a great example just to show how the weird direction that these signals can take. Okay, so the next futures thinking technique that I want to talk about is forecasting. So really forecasting is creating a vision of what could be in the future And it's based on the signals that we've seen, but it's also based on what we already know of our organisations in terms of the push of the present and the pull of the past. So what's already happened in our organisations. And there's multiple possible futures you can plan for, as I mentioned. One is a sort of growth future, which is sort of like, what does my future look like slightly better than it is today? So what does it look like AI powered? And then there's a transform future, which is what if things were completely different? What if we shifted from and to something and were almost unrecognisable? There's a constrained future, which is it's too good to die, too shit to grow, as I call it. Sorry, excuse my French. And then there's the last one, which is all about collapse future. And collapse future is just everything goes horribly wrong. Now, that's a really important future to think about because we want to think about what could undo us and how we prevent it. So how we actually prevent a future from playing out. There was a great report that came out last year from the Institute for the Future about the 3 horizons of AI and how it's going to change work. And they make it abundantly clear that we all need an AI strategy, and it goes back to what you were talking about earlier. This is the next industrial revolution. This is the next internet, and it's going to change. We need to think about this as a transformation of our organisations. It's not just a tech upgrade. And the first horizon they talk about is about AI systems have some capabilities, but there's limitations. So we all know about hallucinations with AI, which is really, someone described hallucination to me as that person in a meeting who doesn't have anything to say but says something anyway, which I thought was a really good description of a hallucination. So really it's making up truth when it doesn't actually have all the information. And here's some signals really that are showing about this kind of stuff that we're seeing with this. So there's, the good, which is things like AI helping to save lives, like detecting cancer and so on. There's the kind of interesting stuff like how it's enhancing education. So for example, the BBC has just released an Agatha Christie AI. I don't know how many of you saw it, which is for budding crime writers. And they've uploaded all of her writing into it. And basically it can help you to work on your crime novel, which I thought was a pretty cool use case. Then there's the kind of bad. So things like an AI candidate running for parliament. I'm not sure how I feel about that one. And then ChatGPT experiencing unexpected outages. So we're seeing limitations. I saw a tweet of that today, like, hey, ChatGPT went down and I'm in the middle of a surgery, what do I do? I was thinking about the implications of this if we become too reliant on it. And then there's kind of like then there's kind of like the ugly, which is sort of things like, I don't know how many of you saw when Google first launched its AI search, and it was recommending like pizza recipes with glue to keep the cheese on the pizza. So there's some pretty quirky things we've seen, and Air Canada, their chatbot made up a refund policy that they had to honour. So I think it's important to know, like, again, this is collapse future stuff. It's important to think about this because then it's what we need to consider in our organisational design and our governance of AI. And then there's Horizon 2. So this is where things start to get interesting. And I definitely think we're at Horizon 2 in some places, in some ways here, and definitely overseas. So this is where you start to see things like more of an ecosystem of AI. So rather than just thinking about large language models that do everything, it's smaller models, each working together. This is where we're starting to see agentic AI, so whole workflows being optimized. And then physical AI, which is what Amy Webb, another futurist who's incredible, calls living intelligence. And this is where we see big jumps. So living intelligence is the combination of AI and sensors and biotechnology. And this is where Sam Altman was interviewed yesterday and said he thinks this is going to be the big thing that really changes everything. When robots are actually starting to learn from the world around them, and even more so when the technology is within us as well. So there's all sorts of interesting signals.
That's why he's joined forces with Johnny Ives, isn't he, I believe, recently?
Yeah.
Try.
Yeah, there's all sorts of weird partnerships going on at the moment, which again is another signal, right?
Yeah.
So this is, Jensen Huang, he's been saying for ages that physical AI is the next wave. And we're starting to see things like there's completely AI-powered hospitals in China and robot doctors. But this is also where we start to see more specialized AI solutions. So like a solution that's really just for legal practitioners that writes briefs. And then starting to see things like, obviously, Neuralink is a great example, AI within us and technology within us. There's also a very strange one, which you can see down there with that Swiss startup. So they're actually starting to make lab-cultured brains that do neural processing. You're nodding, you must know about this, it's strange. Where they're making fetus-sized brains in jars that live for, you have to shake them every 100 days. And people are hiring out rack spaces of tiny brains. Yeah, again, this is a really interesting question. It came up at the tech summit I spoke at last year as to how can you regulate something in government if you're not keeping up with what's changing? So things are just outpacing us. And there's some pretty questionable things going on. So yeah, some interesting signals there. But the most important horizon is Horizon 3. So this is the horizon in which whole industries, organisations and services are shifting from something and to another. So that's fundamentally transforming an entire workflow. It's not just a little solution here and there. It's the big change. And so, some examples are things like health treatment, moving more to personalised prevention. So things like early cancer detection before cancer treatment. And so I guess this is a big question for you, is really to think not just about the sort of everyday AI and what can it do to, I don't know, automate something in this area, but really what could be the big change for you? What could your whole organisation shift from and to? And so I've just put some examples of signals where I've seen big things changing. So education is a really obvious one. I've seen lots of kind of AI maths tutors pop up and things like that recently. And Elon Musk saying every child is going to have basically Einstein in their pocket when it comes to education. There's a private school that's launching an AI-led classroom. And then also changing jobs, like a whole nature of a job. I thought this was interesting. Even influencers getting replaced, which is such a new job. So this is an AI that acts as an influencer and holds products. And I mentioned the AI-powered hospital. A big one is consulting. So sorry guys, but consulting is changing a lot. And arguably the big the big companies like the Big Four are being disrupted by smaller, more nimble companies who are being AI first and using it across all of their tasks.
We actually see that as an opportunity because our clients don't pay to train up our grads.
Exactly, and it's
no disrespect to anyone who's in the Big Four.
No, but it is true, and this is why it's important to see that as a signal now and go, actually, it could be a disruption, or it could actually be a massive.
The old knowledge base of coming in, we're X, Y, Z. It's like actually I've got more information on my phone.
Yeah, exactly. And then I thought this was an interesting one. It's a recruiter from New Zealand who launched a job board, but for AI agents. So you can hire, so they're doing it on a sort of like cost per transaction with the agents. I thought that was interesting in terms of the whole nature of how recruitment's changing. And I don't know how many of you have seen those billboards for the company that's just all about AI agents. They've put these really disturbing billboards up in the US saying things like, why hire humans when you can use AI, which is quite disturbing. So yeah, I think this is a big thing to take in, but it's sort of thinking about what could that look like for you, and how could it either be a disruption, so how do you break yourself completely with what's coming, but also how could it be an opportunity? So I did promise I would come back to AI strategy in all of my ramblings, and I'm going to. I'm delivering on the promise. So this is kind of how I normally take people through futures thinking and weave it back into AI strategy. So I start with reimagining. So you look at signals of change, just like we've done today, and you consider alternate futures. So I mentioned those 4 alternate futures that I use in workshops: the growth, the transform, the constrain, and the collapse. And from that, you can actually come up with what does an ideal future look like. So you might actually find part of your ideal future in your collapse future even. I did a futures workshop for youth search and rescue in New Zealand recently, and their collapse future was actually one in which extraction technology becomes so good, you don't need human rescuers anymore. But they saw that as a great opportunity for them because they have a lot of young people who love using drones in rescues and so on, and they realised they could actually become an orchestrator of the technology or even a producer of the technology itself. And then once you've got an idea of what your ideal future will look like, it's all about backcasting back to the current. So you need to sort of almost think of two curves in your organisation. What do I need to stop doing to create capacity for that ideal future? And what do I need to start doing in order for that future to begin? And it's where those two curves meet when you're actually starting to see a transformation in your organisation. And you can start to think about 3 horizons. And realistically, your first horizon might actually be quite boring. It's more getting the foundations ready, setting you up for what you're going to need. And then you need to start integrating this. So you start thinking about how you can integrate this into your digital strategy or your AI strategy. And then it's about recalibrating. So what are the strategic implications of what I've discovered? What initiatives do I need to launch in order to get to that ideal future? And how do I assess my readiness? If that's where I am now, how do I assess AI readiness now? And what's the delta between those two things? And then it's really about planning. So having your key initiatives and really starting with the ones that are going to move the needle for you the most. Think about what are those experiments you could start with that give you immediate directional intent towards your vision. And part of that is just planning. What capabilities do I need? What are going to be my enablers and what are going to be my blockers? And then it's about executing. So you're actually doing these initiatives, but this is probably the most important part. You are still constantly having that strategic foresight engine within your operating model. So you're constantly looking at these signals of change because every day you'll know that something can be a game changer in AI. And when you find that signal and look at the signals that are changing, you need to ask 3 really simple questions. What is it? So what? What does it mean? And then now what? What do we do as a result of it? And as leaders, we need to bring this to our boards, to our leadership meetings as well, to sort of be constantly looking out for that Ozempic on the horizon that could really change everything, and making that really just a regular part of the way that we work. I guess there's artificial general intelligence, which is that it's the same intelligence as us, and artificial superintelligence, which is arguably the Matrix, is more intelligent than us.
And how do you know we're not already in it?
Yeah, well, it's a good point. I read this, there's this really good article that I read from Columbia University that talked about AI as normal technology, which I loved. And they sort of said, we're at this crossroad now, and almost this whole discussion about AGI and ASI is almost clouding it, because we can shape the way that it goes. So we can still decide whether we are going to hand the car keys over to AI or not. And the AI is transformative in that it is normal. Like, it is just going to be part of the way that we work. So look, I don't know if the Matrix is going to happen. Everyone has different time frames about how it's going to happen. Well, again, there's multiple ways it could go. Like, it's hard to say for sure, but I do think that there will be the flip side of that, where if everything is automated and we have what I call like the Temu version of humans, then I do think that human service will become a currency in itself, and there will be something in the quality of it. Again, it's hard to say which way it will go. I think we need to plan for all of those futures. We need to plan for what will that look like, and it does concern me that that isn't being talked about more, especially at a government level. Yeah, I think voice bots are interesting because I think yes, but it also depends on the context and the intent of the call, and that's a big part of what you need to look at. So I don't know, my service designer background thinks of this. One of the ways that I help organisations to prioritise what's a good task for AI. You need to think about ROI. Is it going to help one or many people? Is it going to save time? But I think arguably the most important one is to go, is this a task that requires a lot of trust building and empathy? And if it is, then I just don't think that AI is the way to go. So it might be, for example, an airline, if you're rescheduling a ticket because you've had a death in the family, is probably, even if you're an extremely digitally native person, the context and intent of that will show that you probably want to talk to a human in the situation. So yeah, I think voice bots can be amazing, but I also think it's about kind of going, where are the tasks? I still think there's a role for humans.
So really the topic of empathy and humans moving up the value curve and, superannuation insurance, really important things for people, and having that, human interaction as we move up the value curve.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that we might even need different kinds of humans to work in our workforce that have even over-indexing on that empathy and creativity as a result of it.
Looking around the room, I don't think we need to get too negative. I think, for as long as we'll all be working, the next 40, 50 years, whatever, I think, well, we're just trying to, bit of respect, we're all a young bunch here, but no, maybe it's 20 or 30, but I don't think there will be not a place for humans.
Yeah, I heard an alarming thing from one of my clients recently who had a deep fake video do a Teams call within their organisation, acting as their CEO, and apparently it was just perfect. He couldn't detect it, asking for a banking transaction, and the only thing that alerted them to the fact that it was fake was it was such a large sum of money. I think it was for over $2 million, which he never would have done.
Well, firstly, thank you to you all for coming up and coming attending this session this morning. Lou, amazing discussion, super insightful. I see Jeff Bezos was saying that AI is going to be the third great wave behind electricity, computing, and now AI. So the concept of actually, could it be as revolutionary as electricity was for the world is actually pretty hard to get your head around, I think, in many respects. But we're certainly in for an exciting ride, and particularly as we might all live to 100, I suppose we better get on with it, haven't we? So a quick thank you, Nadine, as always, for putting together the event. Loads of work goes into this, so thanks so much, Nadine. We appreciate everything you do. And of course, Pete Langerfeld, who's our videographer and helped me start CWTL. So Pete, thank you as always, mate. Keeps us on track and runs a tight ship. We've got some of our team here. Previously, people have asked if they can stay around. If you want a discussion around market trends or how organisations are, approaching transformation, feel free to hang around. Grab something to eat and grab one of our team after. We'll get some of our crew over there. So please feel free to stick around. Before we leave you to get on with your day, I've got a little thank you from Granite Group, Lou. I know you are a key musician and building up your vinyl collection. So there's a voucher for an independent record store that might come in handy. Final thought, give us a couple of album recommendations. I know you're a key musician.
Okay, LPs.
Yes.
Have you heard of Beirut? Beirut's new album.
No, I haven't.
Fantastic. Very good double vinyl. Miles Davis, Kind of Blue, obviously.
There we go.
Yeah,
cool.
They're my two picks of the moment.
There we go. Cool. Well, have a great day, everyone, and thank you. Thank you, Lou.